Don't be afraid to be different, because your idea might be the one that's actually going to change the world and change the way we're doing things.
You have to give people examples of how they can be anything.
We are more powerful when we speak to each other.
There are real barriers that need to be broken down in order for everybody to feel comfortable in all spaces.
Be you, and you can be successful.
Be a disruptor and change the status quo.
I break the rule by being a Black woman on the International Space Station.
Being at the forefront of transformation.
Helping people develop what their role could be.
Redefining what a woman in healthcare looks like.
Having some uncomfortable conversations.
I break the role by being unapologetically myself.
I'm honored.
I am honored.
I am honored
to be a part of World Woman Hour.
World Woman Hour.
World Woman Hour.
more than that. I'm a leader, I'm a mother, I'm a sister and a daughter, I'm a lover and a fighter. I'm a woman. I'm confident and beautiful. I'm creative and powerful. Let them talk the talk. I'll walk the walk. I am more than these words. I am who I am. I am Max Mara.
Don't be afraid to be different because your idea might be the one that's actually going to change the world and change the way we're doing things.
You have to give people examples of how they can be anything.
We are more powerful when we speak to each other.
There are real barriers that need to be broken down in order for everybody to feel comfortable in all spaces.
Be you, and you can be successful. When I was young and was starting to get tattooed or dyeing my hair or getting piercings, people would say, you can't get a job like that. So I'd say, watch me do it. My name is Maggie Freleng. I am a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and producer. I break the role by being unapologetically myself. I grew up in Port Jefferson, New York. It's a suburb of the city on Long Island. A lot of Long Island is very white, particularly where I grew up was a very rich area. And my family wasn't necessarily that. I'm Jewish. I grew up in a lower middle class family, so I never particularly felt like I fit in. Going to school, there was maybe like a handful of kids of color that I went to school with, and I saw the way they were treated as others and as different. I didn't like to see them ostracized or picked on, but at the time I didn't know what these things I was feeling were. My grandfather grew up in the Deep South, and he, told me these stories about him being a kid and similarly not understanding why the Black kids, this was during segregation, were separated from him. My grandparents were always very conscious of social equity, racial equity, and just being just all around. It wasn't this like conversation about it, but it was just watching the way they were and they behaved and the way they just talked about people as people and not others, or they look this way. Everyone was just a person, and my grandfather really inspired me with that. I learned very young that I have a privilege and people will listen to me. It's always been the most important thing for me to help people. And so if I can use myself as a vessel to get stories out there, people's voices who are in detention centers, in prison, locked away and forgotten about by the world, people who are marginalized. I don't speak for these people. I let them tell their own stories. You hear their voices. I just gather them, narrate through them, and I think that's really important. We are all so much more than the worst thing we've done or has happened to us. Fundamentally, that's how we look at people in prison. You are your conviction, and you're there, and you're behind bars. And that's how the system was set up to look at these people. That's how we look at these people because the way we're told to look at them. And I want to change that. I really like to start off and get the backstory of everybody. Who are you? Who are your parents? Where did you grow up? What happened in your life that led you to be where you are? That is what helps people, someone from a totally different walk of life relate to a Black man who's been in prison for 44 years. When you hear like, oh, that happened to him as a kid, and ooh, that could have been me if I just had done that one little thing differently, that resonates with people. People listen to the stories that I tell and they love connecting that way. And I think it's so much more powerful than just listening to someone tell their story presently.
We're so lucky to live at a time where we get to live in a world where Maggie Freleng exists and does the work that she does.
Jillian's podcast, True Crime Obsessed with Patrick Hines, they review everything true crime, podcasts, TV shows, documentaries. So they covered the documentary I did, and it was really great. It was funny. They pointed out all of the really silly things that were in it.
We fell in love with her. And then we became like friends through that. She's doing it not for any notoriety. Like, she's trying to save lives here. The amount of innocent people who are in prison it's staggering. It's like at least 30,000 people, and that's like a very conservative number. Earlier today, Maggie was on the phone with someone else that got out of prison. And on that phone call, she said, do you know anyone else who you were inside with who we need to get out? We need more people like Maggie just tirelessly and fiercely searching for the truth and telling everybody about it.
I think this medium of podcasting has started to create a lot of activists, a lot of people that care.
The thing about podcasting is that it's an incredibly intimate medium. When you're listening to Maggie tell it to you, you're not thinking about all the other listeners when you're listening to a podcast. You're thinking about, I'm being told this by someone I trust.
My podcast, Murder and Alliance, I did a 20-episode investigation about a man that myself and these two private investigators thought might be innocent. Around episode 18, we figured out he's actually not innocent. We think he did this, and we had spent almost 2 years on this case. I had the most visceral, emotional reaction to that, not only because I was upset that I had been duped and put so much time into a podcast that wasn't going to help somebody, which is what my goal was. And I cannot tell you how many people reached out and said, this is what I want to hear when I listen to journalism. It was just all so much to take in going into this investigation, thinking one thing and having the information start to lay out something different.
I don't know. I feel really confused. I just think about Sue. I don't want to have to say to her, I can't do this. I don't want to say that to her. I'm just like, what if David did this?
It's really, really amazing, the amount of people who reach out and say, how can I help? What can I do? I heard this story. And that is so inspiring. And that also keeps me going. Not only the haters, but the people who do care and say, keep doing this work because I hear it and I care. My mom always encouraged me to be me, be creative. My expression was in the way that I look. If I can put amazing credentials on my resume, it should not matter what I look like. Looking the way that I look is groundbreaking because I would bet there are no other Pulitzers with neck tattoos. And, I've sat down with Hank Skinner. He's been in prison for over 30 years, and we had been corresponding for years. So when I finally met him in person and sat down, he said, man, if I knew this was you and what you looked like, I would have been way more open to talk to you sooner. And I think that's because I look like and act like a person that he can relate to. For women to get to where they want to be, we really have to believe in ourselves. I have so many young girls that come up to me and say, you inspired me to be me. I can look and dress the way I want, and that shouldn't matter. What should matter is my inside, my person, my brain. I can have a nose ring and have this job. Yeah, girl, you have that nose ring. Like, you have brains, you can have that job with your nose ring. The world is your oyster no matter what you look like. And that goes for skin color, everything, gender identity. Be you and you can be successful. Just be you and have that drive. I am honored to be a part of World Women Hour.
Seven seas, 7 continents, 7 days of the week, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 notes on a musical scale, 7 wonders of the world, 7 series, Culture is shaped by sevens. Experience the redefining BMW 7 Series now. BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. And I break the role by giving permission to my girls and young women around the world to really reach for their wildest dreams. My name is Emma Andrews, and I'm Vice President of Global Patient Advocacy at Pfizer. I am doing the unexpected by redefining what a woman in healthcare looks like. I was born in Kampala, Uganda, East Africa, but really grew up in Cote d'Ivoire. And I'm one of 7 siblings, so we're a family of 9. Similar to many other families, we fled Uganda during the Idi Amin era. And that's because my dad was a political prisoner for 11 months, and he was one of the lucky ones who survived. So we fled Uganda and resettled in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire. My mom, Veronica Namulondo, is one of my biggest influences. And it started down just really observing how she interacted with patients at the rural clinic where she volunteered. You could see that the healthcare system in Uganda was a lot more fractured after several years of civil war. Then we went to Abidjan, which was not as fractured, but you could still see the inequities when we came to rural versus urban settings. I just felt that it was unjust. Your zip code shouldn't dictate what kind of quality healthcare you get. And her influence was me wanting to do something about those inequities. And that led me to the path of becoming a pharmacist and getting my Doctor of Pharmacy degree. My team and I, we're responsible for leading the company's efforts of embedding the patient perspective across everything we do, from the earliest points in discovery to when a medicine is prescribed anywhere in the world. And then Aunt Pross taught me the importance of humility. She was the first female engineer, not only in Uganda, but in entire East Africa. I mean, someone would think that she would lead with that, but no. The important thing for her, too, is to pull others up. So she's made really a commitment to be a vocal about women in STEM. And then my second auntie is Auntie Liz. She had a 30-year career working with non-governmental agencies, and her career culminated as her being deputy director of the United Nations Development Program. So from her, I learned the importance of listening and the importance of inclusive leadership. And then finally, in my career at Pfizer, one that stands out is Dr. Frida Lewis Hall. She was the first Black female executive vice president, chief medical officer.
Emma was responsible for establishing the Pfizer pharmacist engagement platform. This was perfect because she's so great at engaging and connecting.
And I remember reaching out to her and saying, you know, I'd love to meet with you to just get your thoughts on my career aspirations. And she responded and made time.
So she came to me and asked for some career advice. And I asked her a question that I often ask, which is, what brings you joy? Because if you know what that is, then your passion shines through and you can't hold your authentic self back anymore. And it's been so exciting to see her grow and develop and deliver so much on behalf of patients.
The things that stick with me and I try and embody in my leadership is making sure that I make space, but also making sure I always think about what brings me joy. I absolutely love that I'm being of service to patients on a global scale.
I think Emma's superpower is connecting and including. She has the ability to connect to people, whoever they are, wherever they're from. You know, I said included, and lots of leaders include people. But making people feel included, that's magic, and Emma has that.
I started my career in the community and hospital settings. There, I became acutely aware of how sometimes patients would walk in not really understanding what their diagnosis was, what their medicine was. And I realized the issue lies with the healthcare professional for us to be able to talk in a manner that patients can understand and that lead to activation. So that's where my passion for health literacy kind of was born. Health literacy simply means that you can share health information in a manner that can understand and that leads to activation.
Patients need a voice. And whether you're the translator for them, you're the amplifier for them, this is so critically important. Now, I've seen patient advocacy change, and I've seen Emma change it. And it's gone from asking for, demanding what we think you need as scientists, as healthcare professionals, to partnering with patients to help advocate for what they say they need.
The fact that our entire portfolio of innovative and off-patent medicines is going to be made available to 1.2 billion people in low and middle income countries at a not-for-profit cost gives me that energy to get up every day and do more. My husband and my daughters are my raison d'etre. You know, they really ground me, but also I'm an avid yogi and love the practice of it. Self-care, honestly, is something that's so important, but it didn't really come to light until I was in my 30s when I realized, you know what, I really needed an outlet. And I am so happy that I found yoga. It's such a central part of who I am and how I, re-energize and recalibrate. If young girls and women feel empowered, they will show up differently and be really true to themselves. And what does that mean? Giving them the tools they need, the mentoring, making sure that they build their network, making sure that they know that they stay true to themselves. Don't be afraid to be different, because your idea that you're afraid of might be the one that's actually going to change the world and change the way we're doing things. I'm honored to be a part of World Women Hour because of the women that shaped who I am today, and also because I'm very optimistic about the future leaders that are coming along, but also being very intentional that I'm also playing a role to be able to develop and bring those young leaders along.
There's so much about believing in yourself and believing that you can do it your own way. I think when you're younger, you're just more afraid to do that because it's just not as proven. But I think when you're around for a while and you try different things and then you're like, oh, well, this is my one life. I gotta be able to be proud of my work. And, what does that mean?
Hi, I'm Marjan Neshat, and I'm an actress. I'm doing the unexpected by playing Sandra. There's not a lot of quote-unquote Middle Eastern actors who would be playing a woman named Sandra Jones. I remember a friend of mine when I got this play was like, oh, well, maybe if they've cast you, they'll change the name from Sandra to something more Middle Eastern. And I was like, I didn't go to acting school to play myself. I was born in Iran. And at the time, the revolution was happening and everything changed. And the revolution turned into a coup. And one day, my sister was walking us down the street and this van pulled up. And they were like yelling at her that this thing called a manto, like an overcoat basically, wasn't buttoned enough and her scarf wasn't forward enough. And I thought they were gonna take her. And I just started screaming my head off. And after that, I think we came to Seattle. My sister's a doctor, like all good Iranian girls. I mean, I think that she would have pursued medicine and that it was her thing, but I think she also didn't feel like she had the room to rebel in any way or have that time for self-discovery, because I think there is this pressure of like, you get this opportunity, you better do something with it. Whereas I think when I came, I was much younger and, I had parents who were immigrants who were afraid of everything. So I was on the outside. I just constantly felt like I'm other. And I started to audition for plays. And I did my first play when I was 14. And it was the first experience I'd ever had of not being on the outside. It was like my first experience of not feeling lonely. The first time I told my mom, she was like, people in our family don't do this. But I pursued it so doggedly, and I was like, I'm doing this. And ultimately, they became very supportive of me.
I was about to have my first public reading in New York at Ensemble Studio Theater. And I was hesitant, but partly because this part, Afia, who's the lead character in the play, in a lot of ways, like spiritually, all of these women like are the women in my family. And I was just so nervous, like who was the person that was gonna come in and be able to like deliver this part? And then Marjan read it. And I just remember this like welling up of emotion because I think there was a recognition that in her I had really found a creative partner, someone that knew who these women were and that challenged a lot of our, I think, stereotypical notions of what women from the Middle East or Southeast Asia are like. And she's just phenomenal. So from that point on, like, I just try to work with Marjan whenever I can.
Sylvia does not suffer fools. I think, especially as a young woman, I think you tend to be pushed around by a lot of people with power saying, well, you should do this, or if you really want to succeed, you got to do this. And she sticks to her guns in a way I've never, ever seen. It is remarkable. For a long time, when I started out, there was this thing of like, well, we'll save you for the Middle Eastern part. And a lot of times, what the Middle Eastern parts were tasked with is to give a lesson and not be a fully dynamic, complicated, raunchy, funny human being.
Like, it's sad to even say it, but sometimes you have to remind people that these women exist. I think we have these ideas of like what women in the Middle East and Southeast Asia are, which is like demure or retreating, and it's just the opposite is true. They're strong women holding their own and often taking care of all the people around them.
If you show people in one light all the time, people assume that's what they are. And like, you have to give people examples of how they can be anything, because that's what they need to do in order to grow.
And I think that's what you get when you welcome people to the table with a multitude of different experiences, is you have those stories treated with care and with respect so that they don't become maudlin, melodramatic. They just stay practical. I say this a lot. I think that theater is the place that we go to examine ourselves and for society to examine itself. And what does it mean if what we're seeing on stage doesn't reflect society? Like, then we have a big problem.
Obviously, there needs to be breakthroughs. It can't just be that every time you do a play about a family, it's a white family with 3 blonde women. That is not the fabric of what we look like. Part of breaking the rules, like really helping people develop and understand what their role is and could be. Like, if there's room to do it differently, I think we have to support and empower that. Go out and meet more people and connect with more people and take more risks and work harder. I'm honored to be part of World Woman Hour. If in any way I can be a small part of helping anyone else or making the world slightly better, I couldn't ask for something more meaningful or important.
How is it that the only topic that every single working member of society needs to be good at is the one we don't teach? I'm Vivian Tu, aka your Rich BFF and your favorite Wall Street girly. I break the rule by having some uncomfortable conversations. I grew up in the suburbs of Maryland in a middle-class, upper-middle-class community where we weren't the majority. I would say when I was very young, my parents were a little bit of the tiger parents. They fled China to come here so that I could have all the opportunities they didn't feel like they necessarily had. So education was a really, really big one. And I think that very much shaped how I perceived the world. They wanted me to be just as, if not better, than all of my peers. Those expectations became something that I expected of myself. I was always acutely aware that my parents were very frugal. My dad would always say, 钞票要用了刀口上, roughly translated to, you have to spend your money on the knife's edge. They had this immigrant mentality of the American dream could be ripped away from us at any moment. So they always wanted to be really, really cognizant of how we spent our money. And that frustrated me. I remember Buying a pair of jeans, they were like $25. I got into this massive fight with my mom about how irresponsible I was with money. When I grow up, I want to be filthy rich. I never want to think twice about buying a stupid pair of $25 ripped jeans. Because of that, as I was going into high school, I took an economics class, found that I was passionate about the topics because it finally felt like I was learning something that I could look at the principles I was learning on the page and then apply them to my own real life. When I got to college, I started figuring out what I wanted to do. I started going through the motions of like getting into finance, and I decided that I wanted to do something that was really fast-paced. I interviewed for Wall Street internships and was very fortunate enough to get one. I thought this is just one more chance to prove myself. I have 10 weeks to make it clear that I am the smartest person and I deserve this job. I loved it.
When you think about Asian Americans, and especially Asian American females, I think there's always this perception of kind of like a model minority where you're reserved, you respect authority, you get the job done, you don't complain.
I am smart, I am accomplished, and I am successful because I am a woman.
But I think as you see Vivian in all that she does, she has this like amazing combination of grit and determination that I think whatever that goal is will help make her successful and stop at nothing to reach that goal in a good way.
For the first time, I was seeing trading floor dynamics. They were calling clients with this hand, talking to their research analyst with the second phone. It was just so cool. It was like what I had seen in the movies. There was only one other woman, and coincidentally for me, she happened to be an Asian woman. As luck would have it, she ended up becoming my mentor. She was just so smart and so powerful. That's the only word I can really think of. And when I met her, I was like, I want to be like you. She was the first person to take me under her wing and ask me things like, are you contributing to a 401k? Wasn't. Are you using the corporate hotel catalog to save money? I wasn't. She even bought me lunch for like the first 2 years of my career, and let me tell you, I could not afford it. For the first time in my life, I had a proof point that I could do it. I saw a young Asian woman who did not come from family money succeed. Having female leadership guiding me was incredible. One day we came in and this new person came to the desk, fired half of the old people. The head of our desk got fired. The desk's culture changed overnight. Either you're getting with the program or you're gonna be chopped liver. I began to face what I consider to be serious adversity in the workplace. My new manager did not respect me. He would say things like, "You're too girly for this job." One day I walked into work with a long cardigan, and he looked at me dead in the eye. He folded his hands and he bowed and he said, "Is that a kimono?" I knew I had to go. While I was figuring out my new job, I made a lot of friends. And those friends, they would find out that my previous job had been on Wall Street. And the immediate reaction would be, "Oh, you're going to rebalance my 401k. I got so many of the same questions. I said, well, you guys, I can't answer the question for everybody. I'm just gonna make a video. Welcome to Rich Talk. I had had the idea to do it for quite a while because I saw some horrible, terrible advice going around. And I was like, no, do not do that. And that's what my first video was. Take it from someone who learned. I can show you how. I had 100,000 followers by the end of the week.
It's so funny because to me, she's always Vivian, right? But to a lot of people, she's also Vivian, but she's also your Rich BFF. Like who I see in her content is just the person that I've always known. You ask for her opinion and she'll give it to you, whether it's exactly what you wanted to hear or if it's not what you wanted to hear, but it kind of gives you a dose of reality.
I did not expect my content to blow up. It did, however, make it very clear to me that more people than just my 7 coworkers needed this information.
In everything that she does, she very much breaks the role of what you might perceive or what the public might perceive a Asian American female to be. She's paving the way for people who might not see themselves represented as much in the media or in the financial industry.
I hope what people find is that I'm not special. I'm not your father's financial advisor. I look like I could be anybody's best friend from college. And talking about money is as accessible as it is talking about who kissed who last night. So I think those headlines that say millennials and young people can't afford homes because we like avocado toast or like to drink lattes is ridiculous. Our generation is bad with money because we've never been taught to be good with it. So talk to your friends about money, whether it's about how much you make, how much you're spending. We are more powerful when we speak to each other. I'm honored to be a part of World Woman Hour.
I don't know that I could have worked someplace that was, let's just do it the way we've always done it. I thrive in an environment where we want to actually be a disruptor and change the status quo. And I would define my career by that. I'm Maria Weaver, president of WMX at the Warner Music Group. I'm doing the unexpected by leading people through change and transformation. I grew up in New York City on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I spent a lot of time in the arts community, whether it be dance, music, theater. Music, though, was always really important for me. In New York during that time, music was so influential. There was hip hop, there was punk, all different types of music happening. And I spent a lot of time going to clubs, roller skating. Loved to roller skate. My family life was definitely so influential. My dad was such a strong force. And even though he passed away when I was still so young, my dad is the great-grandson of Frederick Douglass. And so I also knew the family history of what it meant to be a descendant of a Douglass. He was 30 years older than my mom. He had 3 children. My mom, when they got married, she had 3 children. So I always say we were the original Brady Bunch. Being able, when you're 8 years old, to already see your siblings pursuing their careers and pursuing their passions. When you're very young, it alters how you think about your own career and your own growth. I quickly learned that the pursuit of passion was above all and paramount for myself.
Maria is a person that's never afraid to try something different, never afraid to do the unexpected, to do the unconventional.
I started acting when I was about 7 years old and then continued on as an actor for many, many years, acting, dancing, and I went to college as a theater major because that's just what I thought was the natural progression, but I just wasn't as into it. And I knew at that point it was really time for me to make a change. I started working for a company called Rainbow, which was the ad sales division of Cablevision. I like to say that cable was the first disruptor. Before there was digital and the internet, cable was disrupting broadcast television, and nobody really understood this box with all these channels and what it could mean and how that was going to influence culture. And working in that during that time, which was in the late 1980s, early 1990s, was a very exciting time. I mean, we were really changing the way people consumed television. And I was around people like myself who wanted to be doing something different. As the president of WMX, I think about the impact that my division can have on these musical artists in such a different way. What we're doing is not really touching their music, it's touching all the other aspects of their business. If we can actually help them have sustainable wealth or improve their opportunities beyond music, we could really have an impact on their lives, which is very different than I think anyone has approached this role before.
I feel like this job that she currently has is a beautiful convergence of the business and the creative and the artistic, and she's able to really bring all of those skills to play. And in a space where she's creating opportunity for others, for other women, for other people of color, and really looking to innovate in this music space, which as an industry is and has been in much need of continued innovation.
When I worked at Rainbow, it was a fairly male-dominated environment. There were very, very few women, and certainly not many people of color. But there was this one woman there, and she was so influential to me. And not so much about what she said, but how she carried herself. She just had this way of being so direct and being unwavering. That has influenced my leadership.
We look at leaders who are out of our reach, and those are the people that we call our heroes. But so often we're walking among our heroes. Our heroes are in our life. They're touching us every day. And so she's one of those people for me.
I think when a woman, especially a woman of color, is given an opportunity to be in a position that has tremendous influence, I think we have to approach it with great responsibility. It's really important for other young women to be able to look up the ranks and see a woman of having influence, guiding them, shaping the business that they're a part of. And maybe part of that is because I have 2 daughters, and so I know what it is for them to have that experience. But it's also really important for young men to see women in these roles. A lot of them are raising young girls, and to be women. We need to change their perception sometimes of what that will look like for the children that they're raising.
She's beloved by her team. They appreciate not only how brilliant she is, how motivated and inspiring she is, but just that she becomes a mentor, she becomes a sponsor for the people on her team. She looks to really pull up those behind her, alongside her, as she ascends in her journey.
How do I break the role? The truth is, I try to break every role that I'm in. When I think about the roles that I'm in a professional environment, I'm always trying to do them above and beyond what has been done before. When I'm in a role where there's a predecessor, or there's someone that I could possibly be compared to, it's really important to me that I create a name for myself in that role. And whether that be pursuing a project or something that might seem harder than what someone else might want to do, or whether that be just really looking at how can this role actually have impact on the business, and how can this role have impact perhaps in the industry. That's how I think about it. When I leave a company, I hope that I leave it having left a mark, and someone can say, oh, Maria Weaver was a part of that, or Maria Weaver led that, or Maria Weaver created that. That is, to me, so important, that you create something that lives on without you. I'm honored to be a part of World Women Hour.
I think there are real barriers that need to be broken down in order for everybody to feel comfortable in all spaces. I'm Jessica Watkins, and I'm a NASA astronaut. I break the role by being a Black woman on the International Space Station. So I spent the first several years of my life growing up in Maryland, and then our family moved to Boulder, Colorado. I think now I recognize the impact that growing up in Boulder and being so close to the foothills, so close to the Flatirons Mountains right there, that probably somewhere in me was sowing a seed of geology that I would eventually figure out and start to pursue. From a pretty young age, I actually first voiced a desire to be an astronaut. I think I was about 10. What really drove me to that was just this idea of being able to explore the unknown and really just being able to reach out and answer unanswerable questions. I actually was at a after-school enrichment program at the Judith Resnick Elementary School. I came home and asked, who she was, and my parents told me a little bit about her story. And that was kind of the first time that I realized that you could be an astronaut, you can do this for a career and go to space. I will never forget the day that I got the first email from somebody who worked at NASA. And the email mentioned, that we'd be interested in having you come and work on the Phoenix Mars lander. So the idea that I was going to be able to come in and work for NASA and be able to contribute to this mission in some small way was just so exciting. The ways that we can come together and really have kind of a singular mission is what we need right now. Just focus on what makes us humans and the things that we have in common. So I'm really excited about being a part of that. I launched on the SpaceX Dragon in April of last year. It really is just this amazing experience, sitting on top of the Falcon 9 rocket, getting ready to launch. I think certainly being up on orbit and getting to see the Earth kind of as one ecosystem and one single fragile place where we all live, how interdependent we are on each other. And it really reminds you of how important it is to take care of this planet that we all get to live on. Yeah, it was definitely a privilege and an honor to be able to be the first African-American woman to do a long-duration stay on the International Space Station. And, I think it is just a true testimony to those who have come before me and laid the foundation and framework to allow me to be here in this spot at this time, as well as an indication and a nod towards the future and how exciting and diverse the future is that we have ahead of us. And so to be able to be just, a small part of that legacy is really meaningful to me. I really hope that when people look at what we do here at NASA, that they will see how large of a team it really takes to do some of the amazing things that they see NASA doing. Just from early on working on the Curiosity Mars rover. Every day, a team of 400 scientists getting in a room, different disciplines, different goals in mind, all deciding where to explore, where to send the rover the next day, and then integrating that with a whole team of engineers. It is easy for us to see all the ways that we are different and the ways that we are divided. But in reality, that type of teamwork on a daily basis is really what makes NASA great and what really sets us apart and allows us to do the amazing things that we're able to accomplish. Something that I'm really excited about is getting to be a part of the Artemis program. So going back to the moon here in the next few years and kind of building on what we did with Apollo and being able to add puzzle pieces of understanding about the moon, and as a result of that, being able to understand more about the solar system and Earth. It's just going to be a really important and an inspiring endeavor for humanity. Being able to see yourself in roles where people who look like you or come from backgrounds like you are able to step into it and do so successfully. I think that is, at least in my experience, has allowed me to see myself taking those steps forward and even those steps then beyond. I think it is true that we cannot be what we cannot see. Without those examples, we cannot see ourselves in these positions or places that we desire to be in. It makes it very difficult for us to set those as dreams. Having the dream is one thing, but the more that we can provide that representation, I think that just allows a pathway for others to follow behind and then eventually to lead. One message that I learned from my time on board the International Space Station was really just the importance of loving the people around you and just being aware of where the people in your community are coming from, what they need, and what you can do to help them. Be a good team player, be a good crewmate, and that is what's going to allow us to be successful in whatever mission we pursue down here on the ground. I'm honored to be a part of World Woman Hour.
I'm honored.
I am honored
I am honored
to be a part of World Woman Hour.
World Woman Hour. World Woman Hour.
What if we were entering into a new time? A time when the very systems of control and commerce that we had believed to be the status quo were somehow no longer relevant.
You are listening
What
to
if we were
Urban
faced with a
Alchemy
new medium,
360.
a new network, a new system that connected the people and places of the world in a new way?
Urban Alchemy 360.
What if that system is here?
Don't be afraid to be different, because your idea might be the one that's actually going to change the world and change the way we're doing things.
You have to give people examples of how they can be anything.
We are more powerful when we speak to each other.
There are real barriers that need to be broken down in order for everybody to feel comfortable in all spaces.
Be you, and you can be successful.
Be a disruptor and change the status quo.
I break the rule by being a Black woman on the International Space Station.
Being at the forefront of transformation.
Helping people develop what their role could be.
Redefining what a woman in healthcare looks like.
Having some uncomfortable conversations.
I break the role by being unapologetically myself.
I'm honored.
I am honored.
I am honored
to be a part of World Woman Hour.
World Woman Hour.
World Woman Hour.